Welcome to Reading the Bible Together, and today we are in Genesis chapter 20. Or are we back in Genesis chapter 12? If you're confused, I don't blame you because it sounds like we're in the same old story all over again. It's so disappointing. Abraham had been doing so well, progressing in his faith, his behavior slowly but surely reflecting the morality and righteousness that we expect of this great patriarch. And then this. Same old trick, same old deception, the same old Sarah is my sister ruse. Now, many elements of the story are the same as the earlier deception of Pharaoh, but the victims have changed, as has the location. In chapter 12, it was Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, who was fooled. And note that it was a later Pharaoh who enslaved Abraham's descendants in Egypt. In chapter 20, it's Abimelech, king of the Gaths, who is the victim. And this area is none other than today's Gaza, homeland of the Philistines, soon to become the longtime enemies of the Hebrew people, and who would give the Latinized form of their name to the conquered land of Israel in Roman days, Palestine. It seems as though these Abrahamic deceptions would resonate throughout the centuries, even to today. What's shocking to me is that over the centuries, the compilers of Genesis didn't simply leave this story out, or at least edit it out, combining it with chapter 12 as a single event. But such was the respect for Scripture that, unpleasant though it is, this story stays right where it is. It's possible to evade the story by pointing out that the chapter 12 account is recorded by the so-called J source, who refers to God as Yahweh, and this is the account given by the E source, who refers to God as Elohim. See the videos on the Noah account for more on this if you missed it the first time. But none of the commentators, ancient or modern, try to weasel out of it this way. Well, I'm sure some do, but none that I've consulted. The fact is, we're stuck with this story right where it is, and we're stuck with the damage it does to Abraham's reputation. Now, in researching this chapter, I consulted commentators, both Jewish and Christian, ancient and modern, and I was surprised going back even 1,000 years to the great Maimonides, and then to Nachmanides, and then to the medieval Rashi. And these giants of Jewish commentary on Scripture are all united in their evaluation that there's no excuse for Abraham's behavior. What he does is a sinful act. The blame is his in passing off Sarah as his sister and having her integrated into Abimelech's household. The text fully supports this evaluation. Note that Abimelech, which by the way is a title meaning father of the king, or the father of a king, as a king, rather than a proper name. We're going to run into a few Abimelechs in Scripture. Remember, it's a title, not a name. But anyway, Abimelech comes across as blameless and as better in behavior than Abraham. Now, this is shocking. Here's a foreign king in a land which would become a constant enemy, more righteous in his behavior than Abraham. But there it is. The Bible once again surprises us with its honesty. For it's Abimelech who's the honest one in this chapter. Listen to what it says. God came to Abimelech in a dream one night and said to him, "You're as good as dead because of the woman you've taken. She's a married woman." Now Abimelech had not gone near her, so he said, "Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? Did he not say to me, 'She's my sister'? Didn't she also say, 'He's my brother'? I've done this with a clear conscience and clear hands." And then God said to him in the dream, "Yes, I know you did this with a clear conscience, so I've kept you from sinning against me." So Abimelech protests his innocence, and God backs him up. Even more, Abimelech echoes the appeal of Abraham when Abraham pleaded for Sodom. "Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation?" It's just amazing. It's almost as though Abimelech and Abraham have changed places. Well, Abimelech confronts Abraham, and when he does, he doesn't mince words. "What have you done to us? How have I wronged you that you've brought such great guilt upon me and my kingdom. You've done things to me that should never be done. And you can't argue with that. Abraham should not have done it. Not in Egypt and not here. The best Abraham can do when he's confronted with his deception is to plead an unlikely case, resting not upon his own blameless behavior, which would have been tough because his behavior has been far from blameless, but resting upon a technicality. Abraham replied, well, I said to myself, there's surely no fear of God in this place, and they'll kill me because of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother, and she became my wife. Well, the ancient commentators are merciless on this point. Noticing how Abraham is trying to shift blame upon others, there's surely no fear of God in this place, and following up with a dubious technicality. Well, since there's no fear of God in this place, I can do whatever I want. And after all, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother. Well, Abraham, even by the ancient commentators, is described as whining. That's harsh language to use for the patriarch of all patriarchs, but there it is. Now, nevertheless, Abimelech continues to take the high road. We read, then Abimelech brought sheep and cattle and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham, and he returned Sarah his wife to him. Notice it says his wife, not his sister. And Abimelech said, my land is before you, live wherever you like. To Sarah, he said, I'm giving your brother, note he says brother, not husband, which seems to me a way to vindicate himself further. I'm giving your brother 1,000 shekels of silver. This is to cover the offense against you before all who are with you. You're completely vindicated. Now, this is more generous, even more generous than Pharaoh's response, who told Abraham after loading him down with payment against offense, including camels, which is a great thing. Abimelech didn't have any camels because they're not native to that area as they are in Egypt. After Pharaoh loaded Abraham down with booty, he tells Abraham, now go, leave this land. Words which later pharaohs proved very reluctant to say. Abimelech tells Abraham he can stay in the land, which seems to me generous in the extreme. Once again, Abimelech is coming across as the real hero of this particular telling. Nevertheless, despite it all, Abraham ends up financially and materially well ahead of the game. Sheep, cattle, male and female slaves, 1,000 shekels, which was 25 pounds of solid silver. So Abraham profited from this whole thing. But whether or not Abraham profited spiritually is doubtful. After all, thousands of years later, the best we can say is, Abe, how could you? Well, the chapter ends with Abraham praying for Abimelech, and God answers these prayers, so at least there's that. But I wonder if that really is the end of the story, or whether or not it undermines God's confidence in Abraham, who will be put to a terrible test to see whether or not he could, in the end, be trusted. Are the roots of that test found here in this chapter? But that's still to come in chapter 22. So, what can we take from this story? Only this, a reminder that none of God's servants are faultless, not even Abraham. That all are capable of questionable actions, even Abraham. That growth in faith is not linear, but is often the case of one step forward, 2 steps back. That in our many faults and in our fragile faith, there's still hope. That God's love for us continues, that God isn't finished yet, that only in Jesus can we see not only perfect obedience, but perfect forgiveness and perfect love. The rest of us, we keep trying. So mirror Abraham's behavior only in this. Don't let your imperfections, your faults, your bad decisions cause you to despair. Don't throw in the towel. Keep moving forward. God has a plan for you. We will see you next time for chapter 21, where God's plan for Abraham and Sarah is given birth.